special week for me this week, joined by one of the Mount Rushmore of self-storage people. Mike Burnam joins us, the president of God, I'm blanking. How do I blank on the name of your company? Storage Mart. There we go. The president of Storage Mart, somebody who's been in this industry for a massive amount of time. I'm not going to say the number of years, but pretty much really since self-storage has been recognized as an asset class. Your father responsible for starting the company. So excited, and thank you very much for taking the time to come and join me.
Sure. No worries. Looking forward to it.
Have a few things that I really wanted to cover with you. And the first one is something that comes up. And actually, we talk about this with a lot of the guests on the podcast specific to the self-storage space. And you're someone whose name comes up, not just for me, but other people who I talk to about this. A very special space as far as the way that people interact with each other. And I saw this firsthand. I met you for the first time in March of 2022. At a trade show in Orlando. Had no idea who Storage Mart was, didn't know Mike Burnam was who Mike Burnam is. And you treated me so specially. You treated me like I was the most important person in that room. You had the whole team. Alex was there and a few other people from your company. And I was there by myself, a newbie in the industry. Can you tell me a little bit, two things I guess I would ask. Number one, why is storage like that? It seems to be common. And specific to Storage Mart and Mike Burnam, who has a track record where you wouldn't have to give me that kind of time and respect. What is it about the Storage Mart that leads you to treat people that way?
Well, I tell you what, I think most people in this industry came from other industries where perhaps people were not as open as what they are in the self-storage industry. And in the very beginning, my father went to one of the first SSA meetings in Denver, the first one that they actually had started with Buzz Victor. And from there, it was kind of an entire culture of sharing, because then nobody knew what they were doing. And all they could do is figure out by talking to other people. And when I came back into the business in 76, the SSA put on a seminar in Dallas about how to go through and sell out somebody. And there was probably 100 people there, which just kind of blew me away. And at that time, the best thing they could tell us was just set the goods out on the side of the street and somebody will pick them up tomorrow. And that was kind of the beginning of them sharing information with others. And then it kind of led us to believe that the more you give, the more you get. And I would much rather coach somebody getting into this industry on how to do it right, rather than going through and trying to answer their questions on what did I do wrong. And I get multiple calls on both sides. Why aren't I renting up? What did I do wrong? All those type things. And over the years, through going through the SSA conventions, trade shows from all the various states and regions, I've just found that it's better to go through and offer up those type of suggestions than it is to go through and people to wonder.
I find it so fascinating. And what I talked about March of 2022 when I sat down with you guys, and the group I was with at the time, we were pre-construction on a project in San Antonio, Texas. You guys had a couple of stores down there that you were had just acquired, and you literally offered hey, give us the plans and let us go through and we'll give you our feedback on what we think your unit mix is going to be best suited to lease up. That's time and energy on you guys' part, and certainly no short-term benefit to you. How have you found that kind of action and that kind of interaction with other people in the space to play itself out over the long term for Storage Mart?
Actually, you're wrong. There is immediate short-term benefit, because if somebody built down the street or a mile away and they put in the wrong unit mix, then all of a sudden it's going to deteriorate the rental rates for the entire sector of that market. And I'd rather go through and say, hey guys, you don't need that many 5x5s or 5x10s. You need to have 120 square foot per unit. And if you're having issues, send it to us. I mean, spending an hour going through and talking to somebody about their unit mix on the phone will save us hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run, by somebody getting in, not knowing what they're doing, perhaps trying to manage it themselves, or even if they hire one of the the large third-party management companies that are out there. There's some things that you just can't change, and unit mix, loading, where the elevator's placed, how much how big the office is these days is a big quandary. Some people want to put restoration hardware furniture in the office and overbuild everything. And the reality is that people in the self storage business, I mean, a customer, the last thing they want to do is be in a self storage office because they're moving, which is the world's worst thing to have to do, or they're transitioning, going up in life or down in life. So
Yeah.
they just want to get in and out as quickly as humanly possible. And just making those changes, suggesting those type things to people, I think will help the entire industry.
I love when I ask a question and somebody disagrees with me but proves exactly why, and that was such a profound thing. I made this assumption that it doesn't help you. Here I'm
Oh,
completely wrong. It helps you immensely, and your point is very well
absolutely.
taken, right? And we've seen that across the industry, these markets that have gotten not only oversaturated, but
Oh, yeah.
oversaturated with the wrong product, and it destroys markets.
Yeah, but you know something? That's just a fact of life in this business. When we did business in Canada, they have a government agency called Competition Canada. And they were very, very concerned as soon as you bought even one store, what it would do to competition in that market. Would it go through and affect the consumer? And I wrote them a long letter that competition is a fact of life and that whether you want it or not, it's going to happen. And the best thing you could do is just make it work right in the market. Now, self storage, just like all real estate companies, has this up and down aspect over the years. And I have to tell everybody that the last 3 years are not normal. Completely abnormal, as a matter of fact. When we went public in '94, we told the market to expect 3 to 5% same store NOI growth. And you know something? Between '94 and 2021, that's exactly what we did.
Right.
And when COVID came along, it blew everything out of proportion. We still haven't figured out what caused everything. But now, guess what? We're back to 3 to 5% same store NOI going forward. And when you talk to analysts and talk to investment bankers trying to understand the industry a little bit better, I just tell them, it says 3 to 5, is there any other industry that's going to do as well? And the reality is that we have become a major food group. Whereas in '94, people and the market did not understand month to month leases, says you're crazy. How can you possibly do this? And we've certainly proven them wrong, where the sector has outperformed almost every other sector over the last 20 years. And all of a sudden we've become, $100 billion sector. And it's just amazing to me that we've grown like this. And competition is competition. It's going to happen. And we see things happening in big markets around the country where people first entrant into the business do $100 million mistake,
Yeah.
and it's going to pay. I mean, it's going to be a long time before they ever earn a return on that investment.
Yeah.
It goes back to the education aspect of it. If they'd come and talk to us, do I need this? We would have certainly told them, you don't need that, but here's something that's better. It would have saved them a lot of money. So you never can tell.
I love that willingness to go out and help, because listen, you make a
No,
$100 million mistake that sometimes is unrecoverable, right?
exactly.
That can be a challenge to climb out of.
Exactly.
I want to pivot to the second thing I wanted to cover with you today.
Hmm.
And I'm an ex martial artist, an ex kickboxer, and love stories of hardship and recovery, right? That's like the hero's journey.
Oh my
Storage
God.
Mart literally has lived the hero's journey from the time of your father and you mentioned you guys going public in '94. I think it's pretty well known, but for those who don't know, you guys had the lawyers for Public Storage walk into your offices and announce that you had been hostily taken over. Speaking
No,
about competition, right? I'd,
not
I'd love
exactly.
to
Yeah.
I'd
But go
love to
ahead.
dig into the mindset there of like, how do you recover from that? How do you then go on? And now,
No.
for those that don't know, Storage Mart, the largest privately held storage company, I think right around 8 billion in assets right now, the valuation. You guys have built back from having been bought out by the competition, to getting to where you are. How do you go through that recovery?
Oh wow. Part of it is the entrepreneurial spirit that was put into our family by our parents. Prior to going public, we counted up, we were in 40 different businesses. and only 3 had ever made money. So
Wow.
we had 39 failures, 37 failures before we found something that worked,
Yep.
whether it be a trash company or a insurance agency or some of the other things, that double drive-through hamburger restaurant even. I mean, we've tried everything and failed. And the thing is that going back and looking at those things, all those failures just brought us into something that was profitable. And whenever you fail at something, or whether something doesn't go exactly the way you want it to, you just pick yourself up. God has I would like to say that, man plans and God laughs.
Yep.
And whatever the greatest plan in the world is, it doesn't always work out because there's a way that is going to work. When we sold out the first time in '86, we ended up with 2 stores, none of them in Missouri. And we had to completely revamp our entire company. Went back within the limited partnership business, raising by putting knee pads in our suits and getting doctor's appointments when we weren't sick to try to sell a $30,000 partnership. And
Yep.
then when we went public, I mean, it was in '94, you either went public or went broke. And Dean Jernigan and Storage USA were the first ones in March of '94. We came out in November of '94. And, we grew the company after actually purchasing all of the distressed RTC assets of the day. And then in '99, we missed our numbers. And whenever you're a publicly traded entity, you do not control your own fate. You do the best you can. And in our case, we missed our numbers. Public Storage stepped in. But I have to tell you that it was not exactly what we had planned, obviously. And Public Storage did us right by going through and allowing us to trade our equity into 14 stores, many of the stores that we sold in 1986. And of the 230 some odd properties, these were the only ones that did not directly compete with Public Storage. So it started us on a different path. And because we were good guys and didn't try to do LBOs and some other things of a public company, we went back to the Wall Street, raised a private equity fund with a company called Warburg Pincus. And they, for some reason, they liked us. I don't think they had ever made an investment as small as what they made with Chris and I at the time. But we did them right, and they doubled their investment after a few years, but they always wanted their money back. And then it kind of goes back, the way that you've handled your business, your investors, your properties in the past, you treat them right, they're going to continue going through and serving you right in the future. We were able to help get Warburg out by ourselves coming in with a high net worth individual from our little town here in Columbia, Missouri. And that was in 2006. And then in 2007, our partner suggested we go to Canada. And we bought one property and tried to expand it and tried to buy others, and it just didn't work. And there's this one publicly traded company in Canada called In Storage. And they were beating us on everything we tried to buy, and they were paying ridiculous prices at the time. And we knew they couldn't cover their dividends based upon our public company experience, which you got to realize Chris and I were ag school graduates and had nothing to do with financials. I wish we'd listened to corporate banking a little bit better. But what we learned from the Public Storage takeover was we did exactly the same thing with them. And we learned the lesson. Public Storage was very nice to us. We did the best we could. We kept almost all of their regional people and their on-site managers to help us learn to do business in a new country. And it worked out very well for us. And then as we've grown, the same partner happened to have a business in the UK. We expanded over there, bought a portfolio, and have been trying to expand over there. Again, what you do in the past helps you in the future. And because of our reputation, right, wrong, or otherwise, we were able to attract some additional partners recently that allowed us to move into much bigger transactions than we ever thought possible. And each one of those took a failure, if you will, to go through and succeed on the next level.
I love that. And there's so many questions that come out of what you just said. I'm going to go down a certain
Okay.
path. And I guess what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you back to 1999 and the
Mhm.
mindset. Could you have envisioned in 1999 that less than a decade later, that experience was actually going to help you guys, not be a hindrance?
I would love to say that we knew at that time exactly what was going to happen. We didn't have a clue, let me tell you. All we did was we knew self storage. We knew how to build them. We knew where to put them. We kind of invoked on a new product type. We were some of the first to build multi-story facilities, what we called superstores,
Yep.
that were a completely new concept at the time, and it worked. And we went into markets that we knew were good from our public company days. And once we got a foothold in a market, we just went through and said, well, it's tough to get pricing power with a single store. So let's enlarge our presence in those markets. And we did that via development, via acquisitions. Again, thankful that we had some fantastic financial partners that dealt with us. And their job was to write checks. Our job was to go through and find the right stores, the right locations, and operate them profitably. And thank goodness we were able to do that and grew ourselves along the way. Did we ever think we'd have 800 employees? No. I mean, we have 150 in our home office, which when we were public, we were in the front of a self-storage building, and every time we needed another office, we'd kick out a 10 by 10, put down ARPIT, and extend air conditioning. So it was a whole new concept. It's hard to plan for what you might think. You go through and take care of business and just allow what you're doing now to expand as you can. Not everybody needs to have a private equity partner that goes out and puts a lot of money into it, because the reality is you're making a deal with the devil. And you have to understand those things. And I would much rather have somebody call us and we could coach them through a private equity agreement, how the waterfalls work and how the promotes work and those type things that we've learned the hard way over the years to help them.
I was going to talk about that a little bit. One of the themes I love to talk about is the power of networking, right? And the power of
Mm-hmm.
leveraging people. You guys, and I've heard this story from Alex, who was kind enough to come on the show. You talked about a high net worth individual from Columbia, Missouri, but that came through your network. That wasn't an accident that you ran into that person. That was someone that you were introduced to through mutual acquaintance, and kind of elicits the power of networking.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, the partner, our kids went to school together. We were in Sunday school together at church. You saw them at all the athletic events. And we happened to share an attorney. And that same attorney is the one that helped us raise money during our limited partnership days and was our general counsel when we were public. So it all worked out. And the networking that goes on today is exactly the same. I mean, some of my best friends in the world are my competitors.
Yep.
And when we get together once a year, we put on an event, a private event for private operators only, where we sit down and we cry on each other's shoulders, if you will. We go through and everybody tells what their numbers were for the previous year. We talk about the good things. We talk about the bad things. We talk about the challenges. And if it weren't for that networking group, we would not be as successful as what we are now. And because of what Ken Nitzberg started within the SSA, the Large Operators Council, which has grown bigger than what anybody ever thought, this has kind of come out from that. And we have another group we call the Self-Storage Institute, where we took some of the largest operators from around the world and put them together once a year. And we have speakers come in that know nothing about self-storage. And that's our goal. We think we understand self-storage. We want them to tell us about what's the average size of the bank in the future. Wells Fargo told us the average size of the bank in the future is 500 square feet.
Wow.
And and from that, we learned that, listen, we're in the digital age. And our speakers coming up this October are going to be the customer experience guru from KPMG. We've had the head of strategic thinking for Amazon, Travelocity, person who invented the Geek Squad. All these things that kind of go through, and the networking that we have through events like this, that you can't do as a trade show, that you can't do when you have 4,000 people in a room. But you start breaking these things out. And it's helped me not only create lifelong friendships with these people, but also I learn from them. And I don't mind sharing our stories because they share theirs. And that's what this business is really all about.
I love that on multiple levels. And the thing that comes to mind immediately, and this is something I associate with you, is a total lack of ego, where it would be understandable for someone to have ego, right? Like, and you talked about it when the public storage deal happened. you got back to what you know, right? You got back to
Okay.
what you know, which is self storage. That's what you're good at. You know how to go find a location, build the right
Hmm.
facility, get the right unit mix. But here you are going out and finding people to talk about things you don't know that might be super impactful on your
Exactly.
business 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Well, along that same line, I have to say that when Public Storage did the takeover with us, Ron Havner was not the chief financial officer, but he was in line to do so. And he and Harvey Lincoln actually came to Columbia, and we met him there. And Ron became a friend, and I would talk with him when we had issues. He shared. We'd get together every couple of years, and I said, "Hey, how do you handle this? I mean, how do you handle making decisions? I'm going through and trying to get 2 or 3 thousand sites all working in the same direction, and believe it or not, they share also. And I think Ron gets it, and Public Storage gets it. Extra Space is a whole new animal that's out there, and I kind of liken them to Tesla. Tesla's not a car company; they're a tech
Yeah,
company.
right. Hundred
And
percent.
all the data that they collect from their cars, they use to go through and make the next model better.
Yeah.
And we talk about data collection and data analysis in our industry. The reality is, most people say, "Well, I got it. Now, what the hell do I do with it?" And very few people understand what to do with it. And our next level in our industry is looking at the data analytics enhanced by what AI can do for you and determine a forecast for demand, which is what we'd all love to have. And
Yeah.
whether you put in the correlations between housing starts or apartment renewals or how many people move or whatever the correlations you start looking for, that's the next level that we look for. And our groups are trying to work with all those type things. And all of a sudden, our business intelligence department's 3 people. And who would have thought that in self storage, which is the easiest, simplest business in the entire world, that has been made so incredibly complicated?
Yeah. Yeah, Extra Space sort of took a whole new turn into the industry as far as
No doubt.
bringing that background from
Yep.
data. Love that. I want to touch real briefly on
Hmm.
something that happened in during COVID actually, which was
Hmm.
the Manhattan Mini Storage acquisition that you guys came to. It kind of a natural progression of Public Storage late '90s. You guys do the takeover in Canada late 2000s, late 2000 teens into the early 2020s. Here this opportunity comes up to acquire this iconic brand in Manhattan. Kind of really cool for a company from Columbia, Missouri to be involved in what was then the largest transaction in storage.
Yeah,
Still probably is the largest transaction in storage if you count Extra Space and Life Storage was more
right.
of a merger than a buyout. Pretty phenomenal opportunity for you guys.
I Gary DeBode, who is part of the Gottesman family, was chairman of the SSA, sometime in the 2000s. And I got to know Gary. I had him come and speak a time or two about their iconic billboard campaigns, had him come and speak at the ski workshop one time. And I was always impressed with what they had done in that market. And self storage is a locals business. Yes, you can come in from out of town and attempt to go through and make an impact in a market. Public storage and Extra Space can do it through the third party, et cetera. But the Gottesman family did an unbelievable job acquiring 14 acres of Manhattan real estate. And I guess as families transition from one generation to the other, not every generation is, loves self storage, and they had other options. And it so happened that, it was a publicly marketed transaction. So it was an auction. And I have to say that, yes, we understood self storage, but Manhattan self storage is completely different than the other market in the entire world.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
And we had to dig deep on our understanding to try to go through and underwrite something like that. Thank goodness we had some fantastic financial partners who this was a tiny transaction for them, and they helped us through every aspect of it. Likewise, Citibank was our advisor on this, and they have been instrumental in all of our growth going forward. And had we not had those partners, we could have never done this. But in saying that, I, when we took over, it was interesting because we cut 2,000 locks the first month. You can imagine just the physical bolt cutter action of that. And then you start looking at the number of hours they were open. They had vans that would not only move people in, but also move people out. We talked with one woman who handled her fragrance business using the Manhattan minivan to deliver to Macy's. And other people doing exactly the same thing. And I mean, we just start, and I know Manhattan's different. And we've learned that it certainly is different, but some of the standard things that we picked up from Biloxi, Mississippi work just as well in Manhattan.
Just a
We
little
cut man
different weight per
hours.
square foot.
We cut man hours. We cut office hours. We narrowed that down. And then COVID hit. And COVID hit New York City probably worse than just about any other market, perhaps maybe than the West Coast.
Yeah.
And people moved out and apartments dropped down. It was the antithesis to what was happening in the rest of the industry across the country. Whereas 2021, 22, and 23 were the fantastic years for self-storage. Elsewhere, New York, it was not quite so good. And by the time we cleaned out the delinquency, by the time we made the changes, all of a sudden we dropped occupancy. And it's been a tough row to hoe. And I think in looking back at what we've done in other markets where we bought a portfolio, in Des Moines, we bought a 16 store portfolio. We're enlarged that to 27 stores and we took it over. We're getting $6 a foot. Now we're getting 12. When somebody goes through and spends $1,000 a square foot for self-storage in New York City, everybody starts looking at their numbers and say, oh my gosh, well, hell, I can make it work at $1,000 a foot. Let's build. And all of a sudden, a market that was constrained by all of the issues that are incumbent in a big city are overcome when you can overpay for buildings to convert or overpay for dirt. And I'd say New York City probably has more new development than any major market in the world.
Yep.
And it's all been in units 50 square foot and smaller,
Yeah.
which works sometimes, but not always. I mean, we're in the process now. We have 17,600 4x4x4s. We're converting 100 of those into 4 10x10s, and we're getting almost the same amount of money. Wow. The markets in other markets have likewise no longer looking at 50, 60 square foot per unit. I mean, I think in New York, 75 square foot per unit is probably where you should be. Nobody is building anything of that market, that size right now in the market. They're all building to the 2019 unit mix, right, which is New York has changed. And those are the things that you kind of learn by making lots of mistakes. And long term, owning 14 acres of Manhattan real estate will be very good. There's short term pain in everything that you do. We're making positive strides. We're still able to push rents just as strongly there as we are every place else. Extra Space has taught us an incredible lesson in what they've been doing. That who would have thought that our customers would accept the huge rent increases that they have as an introductory rates. And every time we try to disprove what they do, we end up proving it.
Yeah.
And I mean, all those things are lessons that you learn from, every time I go to a trade show, I insist everybody that works with us that goes, they have to bring us back one good idea and just one. And so far it's worked pretty well.
Man, I have so many more questions I'd love to ask you, but I promise to honor your time and I promise to keep this to a half hour. Would love in the future if you would give us another half hour to come back, have you come back. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you folks are now offering third-party management as well.
Yes.
I'm going to roll on the screen here the connect to Herbie Bowman, who's the head of that for you guys. If you guys found Mike Burnam to be as insightful as I did, and it's a company that you'd like to connect with, and for as far as maybe managing a store for you or just getting a hold of them to get some insight, I'll put Herbie Bowman's contact there so they can get a hold of him. Mike Burnam, man, so thankful, grateful for you, as I said, and I've told you this in person. Made me feel so welcome in this industry and made me realize very, very quickly, as someone who's been involved in a bunch of other businesses in my background, how special self-storage is as a place. Cannot thank you enough for being the human being you are and for taking some time to share your knowledge with us.
That's going a little far, but give them my email address also, please. That's fine.
Will
Have them
do.
reach
We'll
out to
put
me
that
if
up
they have
there for sure.
questions. Always willing to
Well,
talk.
I didn't want to throw that out there on you, but it doesn't surprise me that you'd be
No,
willing to
no
give that
worries.
information. For those of you watching, if you took anything of value out of this, which I certainly hope you did, please subscribe to the channel, give us a like, put something in the comments there. You're going to see Mike Burnham's email here as well, so feel free to reach out and give him thanks for the information he was willing to share. We'll see you guys next week on Self Storage Made Simple.
Thanks, Thad. See you.